You're on.
Let's rock and roll.
Okay, Mary, do you want to say anything, or you want to just?
No, let's get right to it.
Okay, board had public hearing on Monday. I got a brief rundown of some of the things that came up. I didn't get anything that I specifically had to answer, as far as I can tell. If anything does come up, or if any board members need any clarification on anything, I'll be glad to do it.
I apologize.
Sure.
I see that Dan's here. I don't want to make him wait through the whole budget process. He's actually here because, wow.
Cool, huh?
He's here because of 109 Center. I did not want to make a decision the other night. It was just the three of us. Mr. Brown also wasn't there, so it was just the three of us at the board meeting. I said that we would talk about it briefly today, and I don't want to take away from the budget at all, but I wanted to do this while Dan's here. There's been a lot of movement on that, on 109 Center, but nothing to the effect from the bank.
He's got a letter, an arm's length
Yeah, I got some.
transaction letter, and I'm not sure.
What does that mean?
It's new to me. A letter of commitment is what I usually recognize, but in a short sale, maybe.
From the
this is-
bank,
From the bank,
saying,
saying, well, what they want to do is they want to transfer the actual sale of the property into a short sale.
what does that mean?
Don't know.
They want to unload the property as soon as.
Yeah, they want to get it, the bank did an appraisal on the property though. And it came in at 10,000. So they don't want it.
I know they don't want it because they haven't done it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I don't want, I'm not gonna wait another year, 3-5 years before they decide what they're gonna do.
Are you,
Dan, you have that?
Yeah. Yep.
you got it? Still, the buyer, the lender is probably gonna expect the buyer for a letter, he'll have to have a letter of commitment, meaning the finances are in place and that type of thing. That's kind of usually we're ready to roar, that,
I'm all, if there's something concrete from the bank, and that's what I said at the meeting,
yeah.
if there's something concrete from the bank, obviously I would rather have it on the rolls. I don't want a vacant piece that's not making any money.
No.
But I'm not going to, I still want to move forward so that we have the option. I'm not going to stop the process that we're in right now. What I will do is, if we have the board's permission today, I mean, if you want to wait till the 21st, that's up to you guys, but I have no problem moving forward today with, if you want to allow me to move ahead with the demolition, if this is just the bank,
Doing this thing.
Smokescreen.
Yeah.
if I can get I'll talk to the bank directly, get a commitment, and
Right.
say, exactly, and then we'll send this to Ben Gailey.
That's what I was just gonna say.
Yeah, we'll send it to Ben Gailey and say, Ben, you tell us, if this is something that the bank's actually moving forward on, then I have no problem, but again, we've gotta get a timetable from the bank.
That doesn't satisfy me
Right.
with this timetable. It sounds like just a lot of crap, so.
Well, that's what happened with the one on Mern's.
Yeah,
The bank came back in and was like, oh, no, we'll take care of it, don't worry, because they didn't wanna lose it. Then as soon as we backed off and said, okay, we're not gonna demo it, okay, well, we'll get there when we can. And now it was another months, and now we're in the middle of that, now we're going after that again, we're gonna demo that. But what I don't wanna do is back off at all, and I'm not talking about backing off demoing it, I'm talking about if we tell them that we're gonna wait, then they're gonna wait even longer. So,
let's just tell them, no, we're not waiting. And, if something comes to light, Dan can bring something, then we'll just say, okay, no problem.
Yeah, but this is not going to happen because Phil's not even in the country.
Who's
He's on his
Phil?
The attorney
The attorney,
for
he's on his
seller.
honeymoon. Nothing
good
can
for
get done.
him.
I'm just saying, nothing can get done without him. So if you go and approve the demo on the house,
How long is he out of town for?
I have no idea. But it's like anything. If you have a wedding, you don't plan the wedding a week before.
I
This is
know.
probably something that's been planned, not to cancel.
No, and I wouldn't.
I know, there's a lot of people in Las Vegas that do that.
Either or, we'll definitely have to have Ben Gailey take a look at this, because I won't dismiss it. Because again, we definitely want a house on the rolls. But I also don't wanna wait, because I mean, the people are expecting, particularly people in that community are expecting us to make a move.
Is there anybody point of contact on this? I didn't, Dan, was there anybody on here we can call?
I received that paperwork from Sean Brown, my attorney, and he got that from Phil.
And Phil is the owner's
Sell-
attorney?
sell the truck, yes. But you guys said that you guys would postpone the demolition and everything if there was movement.
Well, we have already a week.
But there's movement. This is not gonna happen overnight.
No, not movement,
You said movement.
movement by the bank.
This is movement by the.
Well, that's what we'll find out
I
tomorrow.
don't know if it is.
Can I just have the floor for like 2 seconds?
Yeah, go ahead.
Alright. The title search has been done on the property, I paid for that, that came back clear. All the liens on the property were cleared from the IRS, they're done. The house was, the bank appraised the house, they sent an appraiser out to the house and appraised it, came in at $10,000. Now, why would the bank spend money if for something that
Did they just appraise it?
they appraised it last week,
Oh.
they came back at 10.
That is good stuff.
It's worth nothing, it's a shell.
I know.
Yeah, but, you know, we're getting into an area where we're gonna spend money at Gailey's on a private property.
And we understand we've already spent money
Yeah.
with a lawyer and the engineer that came down and told us that it was,
Structurally.
if we didn't bring the engineer down, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
Yeah, then it was a safety issue, and it was still.
Well, no, but I mean, saying if we didn't bring him down,
Yeah,
and we didn't send a notice saying we're gonna demo the house,
yeah,
none of this would have happened.
right.
We
You're absolutely
still-
right.
We
Yeah.
still will be sitting where we were before. So,
But you did do it, and you are getting movement though.
well, I just said, what we're gonna do is I need a copy of that,
You can have that one.
okay. And that'll go to Ben Gailey,
Or something.
and here's,
Is there,
That is.
No, it's a copy.
Dan, again, I in no way do I wanna take a piece off the rolls. But in the same breath, the bank has abused this community way too much. You're the person who's unfortunately taking the brunt of it. I want
I'm
you to.
not, the town is. I'm not taking the brunt, so I'll move on to another one.
But you've already put money into it, invested time, money, everything.
Yeah, but it's just a house.
I'll
Move on to the next.
I'd rather.
We need more families in this town, we need more people spending money here.
Exactly.
If
I
you tear
agree.
down the house, you have a lot, then what?
Well, I don't want to, but I don't want it sitting there for another 3 years.
Well, it's-
But,
I understand that. I'm on your side. If I was the neighbor, I'd be pissed off too. I mean, quite frankly, you know?
what we'll do is, let me see what Ben says about this.
Mhm.
Let's see if we can actually get a real person on the phone from the bank. If we can lock down a timetable, a reasonable timetable, that they're gonna get you, once you have the property, I'm done, because I know it's gonna get done, it's
Yeah, of
gonna get done
course.
right, it's beautiful.
Mhm.
The bottom line is getting in your hands, and that's what we're trying to do. So, let's let the lawyer take a look at this, and I will get back to you on what he says.
Mhm.
Hopefully you can get a hold of a real person at the bank, and we'll go from there. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, I don't know what that letter means, but I'm cool.
Yeah.
I've never seen that either.
Speaking of the neighbor, Laura Milsom wasn't able to be here tonight, so she sent me an email, but I'll give to Gina to put in everyone's box. She's just concerned about going forward, I guess, renovation, or if it's demolished and new house is built. Some assurance, after they've looked at that for 6 years, that the new house would be a single family, approximately the same dimensions, wouldn't adversely impact their views, would be completed within a strict time frame, and would not be a trailer or modular home.
I think you have to follow the same footprint, basically,
Yeah.
because I don't think. it
Nothing's gonna
complies.
change on the property.
Exactly.
It's
And
gonna be
Dan-
the same-
Dan, this is
it's
the
gonna be
second-
the same thing.
Second time Dan said that, he mentioned at this meeting,
Yeah.
this past meeting and before that.
Yeah, the building department, they can't expand the non-conformity.
There's no room on that property to do it either.
No.
Right.
It's not even like there's.
Right.
But it's-
backyard.
it's-
It's
it's
the
far-
same, it's gonna be the same building.
Exactly.
There's
Yeah,
no-
but as far as what I do with it, whether I sell it or rent it, she can't tell me what.
Oh, no,
I do.
no, I know what you mean.
I decided purple.
Dan, she
You
can't,
know?
she can't tell you any of the things she put in the letter.
These are
She's
her
asking,
concerns.
Concerns.
she's asking for basically a communication
Mhm.
of what's gonna, she wanted a little more, because she's dealt with it for 5 years. You
But
did,
it hasn't been 5 years, Mr. Flynn.
you made a good statement the other night of exactly what's happening. I think she was just following it up.
She
That's
just
all.
wants to know what's happening with
Did
it.
it fight?
No, I get it. Climbing up and stuff.
That's the story he's staying with, but the other
They
guy,
want you to fry pan.
all right.
Good.
All right, so, So a couple things. First, you have, one of the things that I've been looking at for the last couple of weeks is our assessed valuation. I gave copies of the before and after for the last year. And when you look at the totals from the tentative budget of last year, which was $333,083,990, and the total for this year, which comes out to it's 307. This gives you the town, but there, we actually have one directly for the village. Let me just pull that so I'll give you the exact number. It's around 307 million from 333. So what that, in all in a nutshell, the assessments went down about $25 million. What that means is that tax rate is going to jump dramatically in response to the change in the assessment down. That shouldn't be confused with the tax cap, which specifically refers to the overall increase in spending that the village, the actual number is 307,827,824, so almost 308 million. Where the tax cap factors in last year's revenue and a formula based on inflation and so on that's provided by the state and gets plugged in to a formulation that the state puts online, and essentially our tax cap levy limit is $3,008,560. The tax-based growth factor is 1.0053. The allowable levy growth factor is 1.0148. Now, last year, the village was able to take a carryover credit, I believe it was around $37,000. What carryover credit means is that if you don't take your fully allowable tax cap limit in a previous budget, it is available to you in a subsequent budget to add on to increase your tax allowable levy. This year, we didn't have that luxury because last year, pretty much everything that was available to borrow, or that was available to levy, was levied. So we don't have any, we don't get any carryover credit this year. We also don't get any credit for ERS, PFRS because those rates actually went down for this coming year as far as what we have to pay. And if those don't go up, you don't get a credit. So I spoke with the representative of the State Comptroller's office because I was very concerned about the drop in assessments. And I just want to make sure that the tax cap had no impact as far as on our valuations. And I was assured that the formula does not factor in taxable assessed value.
But that's
Okay.
why we hadn't even considered.
Correct. And that's a very important factor because what the state's looking at is what was your borrowing or what was your levy last year? When I say borrowing, I mean levy. If I do that, just to forgive me. What was your levy last year? And put in the growth factor, and what is your levy maximum allowable this year? We also have one other thing. Because of the municipal debt that we have to fill out a constitutional tax limit document. This will be forthcoming after I have a little bit more finalization on the budget, then this will be filed. We talked about this a couple months ago because they had a blank and there was all kinds of questions as to where it was, and I don't know where it got lost. They got a new one and that's all said and done. But in last year's filing, the village had exhausted 32% of the tax limit, okay? The tax limit last year was $7 million and change. I don't anticipate that the constitutional tax limit will be any factor in the final determination of what the village decides is gonna be the levy. But I just wanted to make sure, because there are two things that we have to, what I call hula hoops, that we have to get through before we can actually adopt the budget. And that is, do we pass the constitutional tax limit requirement, which we will, based on the numbers I see here, and are we within the tax cap parameters, because the governor and the legislature reached a deal on the budget. In that, there is a budget bill language, if anybody wants to look at it, that basically talks about the rebate program if the municipality stays under the tax cap limitation.
That's still intact, the rebate program?
Yes, it's actually was when on April 1st, when the governor signed the new budget for the new year, it's in there.
Okay.
Now,
And they did correct that language, so if you're less than 2%, you still maximize the rebate.
yes, absolutely, because again, that's where the carryover piece comes in, okay? I will give them a lot of credit on the carryover. If they didn't give you the carryover, what municipality wouldn't go for 2% every time, right? Because you just leave money on the table if you don't do it. So that carryover provision is very valuable because it will not void the village's ability to borrow that or get that levy on a future year if it's needed. So if the village here decided we're gonna do 0% increase this year, you've banked 2% worth of levy for future years. Okay, so that's really important because it gives the ability for the municipality that, let's say, doesn't need the money today to build themselves a little security for the levy later if that's what they end up deciding to do. Okay, so constitutional tax limit should be no factor. The tax cap, as long as the village stays under 3,008,000 as far as total levy, you'll be within the state's requirements for the rebate program. And right now, our current levy is lower than last year's adopted budget. Okay? Now, there's a couple reasons for that. You have certain expenditures that fell off this year. Okay? Certain things that had to be paid last year that aren't having to be paid this year. There are, one of them is a borrowing item, and I want to pull that up because that will help with, just find the bond that applied to. So right now, the levy that is proposed in the tentative budget, and again, I want to specify, we're talking general fund here. We're not talking water or sewer. Water and sewer is not levied, it's a fee, okay? Right now, the general fund levy is 2901948. That's essentially on the second page of your document, okay? Last year's levy on the actual budget was 2949053. Okay, and that essentially gives you approximately $47,000 less levy in this current document than in last year's total. And as I mentioned, there were certain things that changed. One of the things that this board did change was your overtime issue. That put 5% back in your pocket. That's about $100,000. Okay.
Nice.
There is some other spending that changed, and again, I could go through some of the detail on it. We had a 2003 principal for serial bond was 53.7. That was worked into the 2000, I believe it was a 2009 bond. I'm sorry, it was a 2012 bond. So that dropped, the 53.7 dropped off, and then the 2012 ended up picking up some of the difference. You have some tax benefits in that. Sales tax numbers were higher than originally budgeted for, but we stayed with a conservative number on that. You knocked off some of your attorney costs. you did backfill on your engineering costs. But there were some things that this board did, like I said, with the overtime and so on, that really puts you in a good spot as far as your overall levy. So what I'm gonna say right now is that the board has approximately $106,000 of additional levy that can be added to the budget, and still stay within the tax cap. I'm not recommending that you do it, I'm just saying that that's where the numbers fall. Also, the board has the ability to look at short-term debt and make some modifications to short-term debt to take it out of your 5-year plan to give you a lower principal payment, which will give you more room to handle some of the things that are coming around the corner, like the contract settlements and the amounts of money that are going to be required from contract settlements. Unforeseen costs that will be discussed after this meeting. Snow budget costs that happened this year. Tax certiorari settlements that have come around the corner. One, I believe everybody received in the mailbox, that is for a major commercial property here that had a relatively large adjustment to their assessments. We're gonna have to factor that in to the actual assessed value. Our assessed value number that you have in the tentative budget will go down. Okay, there's another certiorari out there that we don't have the court order yet, but if we do get it before the budget's adopted, that will also factor in to the total assessed value, okay? So on one hand, your overall levy is what I just told you. That's your maximum. The rate will go up in accordance with the valuations going down. I believe the one certiorari, I think, was around 700,000. Let me just pull that paper just to make sure. Did everybody see the one I'm talking
How could the
about?
assessors have been that far off?
Well, let's put it this way, this property has been in certiorari for at least 5 years, okay? Originally was in certiorari. I brought it up, but I don't see it, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. This property here, its assessment was, in 2011, almost 1.6 million. It was reduced to 1.3 million. That was at I think 52% assessment rate. Now that we went to 100 with the reval, this property was assessed at 3.2 and change, 3.2 million for 2012, 2013. It has been reduced to 2.45 million, which is $771,000. That will come directly off of your total that you have on your tentative budget, okay? Now, what it tells you is that some of the properties here were way out of whack and weren't adjusted for the change in the economy, let's say, after the reval. The other thing I want to point out, and this is why I gave you each copies of the before and after, is that the one thing that didn't get much adjustment were commercial properties. Almost all the residential properties were adjusted down. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you're a taxpayer and your assessment went down, but the rate goes up dramatically, you could end up being a wash or a 1 or 2% increase. And I think what you'll find is most of the residential properties, that's what's going to happen. They're going to have a higher rate of let's say $9.50 a thousand. But because their assessments went down $20,000, $30,000, their actual tax amount will be flat.
Oh, I thought you
It
still
will-
need the revenue though, right?
It will be, well, it'll be flat because they have a lower assessment per thousand, so let's say they have 30,000
Oh, okay.
less. Okay, so that's 30 times, let's say 950, okay? So you're essentially looking at, let's say $300 for the sake of argument. So they have $300 lower assessed amount, which means that the higher rate should wash that, so that their actual dollars for taxes will be comparable to the previous year. Because the previous year, they were assessed at a higher rate, but the rate, their assessment, was at a higher level, but their rate was at a lower level. Okay, do you follow the math?
But I'm concerned about something you said, suggesting that residential properties have more or less universally gone down, suggesting that commercial properties have universally gone up.
They haven't been changed. They haven't been changed from last year's assessment, unless the individual commercial property did a certiorari on it. Okay? The reason why I'm saying this is because there's nothing to say that any of those commercial entities might not appeal. And that's why the board needs to understand that the initial reval that was done, there were some questions as to not factoring in the change in the economy. And a lot of the assessments seem to have been made with a higher economy in mind. So after a lot of Board of Assessment review and a lot of things going on, that firm ended up making a lot of adjustments down. And that's what this board is seeing, okay? A lot of those adjustments that came down. The one thing I wanted to find out was, did we have any big hitters here that really knocked the valuations down? But the evidence says no. It's just across the board, residential properties were adjusted down. So my instinct with that tells me that a majority of the residential properties here, as long as the board, which the board's committed to do anyway, stay within the tax cap, should end up with the rebate program at a flat from last year, unless their assessments went up, okay? Most, I would say, 70 to 80, maybe even higher percent residential properties got some type of lowering. So residential property owners probably, based on the budget, the way the board's got set up, will be fine. And I think it's a little bit of evidence to some degree. You don't have a lot of people here asking questions about the budget. But commercial property owners will see an increase because the tax rate will change approximately maybe 6%. So if you have had no change in assessment, you're going to get 6% probably of an increase in taxes. Okay. Now I'm putting it out there because after tax bills go out, I'm sure there'll be some questions, and I'd rather you know now what the landscape looks like than later on, kind of being caught off guard. Well, I don't understand, how did that happen? The valuations is a big deal, especially this year, and that's why I'm highlighting it. Okay, so majority of your residents will probably, as long as they get the rebate, they're happy. They're not going to worry about it. Your commercial properties, some of them might challenge it. Okay, I think there's a lot of commercial properties that are spot on. You also have some people that own lots of properties here that hire professional people to review their assessments every year. And from what I can tell, it pays off for them. And they're entitled to do that. But it's a factor you have to factor in when you start planning your revenue stream. Okay? So that's that in a nutshell. Any questions on that? Rate versus cap? The board's on the road to stay within the cap. You stay under 3 million, you're under the cap. Again, I will have to reprocess these numbers only from the perspective of what the rate's going to be. The tax cap number's there.
As far as per thousand.
Per thousand,
That's,
correct.
that's gonna go.
That will change.
Yeah.
Should go up based on
Yeah.
search.
Yeah, because we've lost.
We've lost some
Depends on
value.
the revenue
Unless somebody hotel gets built, right, then you have an add to your overall
Well,
value.
let's attack the 5-star.
Well, again, these are all considerations for the board. I'm just giving you, what you're looking at. So my understanding is after we'll fine tune the budget, okay, the valuations will go down at least $1 million from what I can tell. So instead of 308, you'll probably be around 307. All right, so that's about $26 million swing from last year. Your rate will go up proportionally, pennies, from what's proposed now, I believe was 943. Then what's also going to change that is whether the board decides to add revenue requirements to this number. You are under last year's total revenue number. So the reality is you right now are potentially banking around $100,000 for carryover in the future budget. I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can carry over that much. I think you're gonna have to really discuss some things, especially certs. Cert number, I recommend goes up based on just what we have right here with this one.
And there are some other things that are coming down the line, like right now, I'm sure the fire department budget shows a significant fund balance that is not gonna be there by the end of the year.
Yeah, that's true, because they haven't spent certain amounts of money. So, I think there's a couple things I want to highlight in the budget, which we'll go to next, and then it's really up to the board as to where you want to go after that. I think you have a good document as far as the overall numbers. And I do think that if we get some answers to a couple things that are in here, you'll have a document that will work for you. But there's a lot of unknowns out there. Some of them are knowns, but the gravity of the knowns, like how much is the budget, or is the police contract going to cost, okay? Where are you gonna get the money for that? Where are you gonna get the money for other things? One of the things that you'll talk about later has to do with one of the special funds, okay, being your sewer department. That you don't have to worry in this piece, okay, because this is all based on taxes from your residents. That's a fee, okay, so sewer and water are fees that you can handle in a different sphere because they don't necessarily apply to your overall revenue sources here. So that's in a nutshell. I just wanted to highlight all that. Rate versus cap, constitutional tax limit, tax cap, everything looks good at this point. You do have some room, and I want to add in the debt restructuring piece, because I really feel it's something this board should consider, because you have been left with certain financial mines, in my opinion, not purposely put there, but just by virtue of costs that you're going to have to pay for, and the only way you're going to be able to pay for it is adjusting your spending plan or borrowing money. Those are the only two ways you're gonna pay for it, okay? As long as you keep current spending as it is, okay? So, if we could turn to the budget, let's just I'm gonna highlight a couple things I'd like some support from the board on. Okay, on the recap, you've got the valuation will go down. Last year's number was 888, that was adopted rate. That's your rate last year, 888. Your proposed is 943, that's probably gonna go north. It will go north, it all depends on how much it'll go north based on your spending plan. Okay, next, general fund, and I'll number these pages for the final budget, so everybody's got the page numbers. Everything in your revenues, I think, is pretty solid. There was, I understand, a discussion about the clothing bin or something like that, about $500 out of the clothing bin.
Oh, that was put in a special account for the Senior Citizen Center.
Is that how you're budgeting this?
No,
I don't think you're
we're
budgeting
not
it that
budgeting it.
way.
But
It's
that $500.
Unanticipated revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in that account, but that's not, you're not
It's
budgeting
not
for that
budgeted,
revenue.
no,
Okay,
but
so
that was the question.
okay, that does not exist in the budget. That's unanticipated revenue that the board last year or this year decided to put into the Senior Citizens Fund. But I don't have any direction as to future dollars going into there. That would be a yearly decision by this
Correct.
board. Okay, and you don't even know how much you'll be getting. You know, those bins might not be as fruitful this year or next
There you
year.
go.
Okay, but that's not a budgeted item, so I just wanted to make that part clear. Sales tax, we should be getting sales tax, our first quarter payment at the end of this month. So we'll see how that trends. And I'm expecting that to be better than budgeted, so the revenue there should be a little bit better. So that's your totals there. Okay. Okay, so now we're gonna go to our spending plan. Nothing on the first page unless anybody has a question. I understand there was a question about the court prosecutor. Was that answered?
I believe so.
Anybody have any questions about the prosecutor? Okay, well, this year and this year's spending is over $8,500 for Menard. And the way I understand, we budgeted the 8,500 was it's a fixed payment, no more, for whatever prosecution hours are required. You plussed up your engineer. I do recommend the board hone down on a engineering firm that will be able to get you the deliverables, because I know that there wasn't a decision made as to your engineering firm, but you probably want to hone in on that. Judgment and claims, this is your certs. Just on this one cert alone, the village,
It's already spent twice over. Gonna have to put money for that.
okay, here's your numbers for the last certiorari. Total due in taxes for back money is 11,000 and change. This year, we're gonna reduce the 2014-15 roll by 771, and that 771 will come out to about $7,000 lower revenue for that one certiorari. Okay, now, the issue that we have, again, and I mentioned this earlier, we've had certioraries come through the year and no money was budgeted for them. So now there's 11,327.67 cents. I'd like to talk to the board in executive session, because it relates to a specific business, about a way to pay this and stay within the court order. And I just have a recommendation, and the board can tell me whether they want to go with that. But right now, we have to refund this property 11,000 and change. And next year, we will lose about 7,000 in revenue on this. Okay?
Are you recommending that we say 5?
No, I'm recommending you increase it.
Put a 1 in front of
Yeah.
5.
Put a 1 in front of 5?
Yeah, at least. I put 10,000 on it to 15,000.
That's what I'm saying. Put a
Yeah,
1.
I think if you put 10,000, at least you give, because you do have contingency funds, so
Right.
you are
But again,
protected.
we're trying to really zero the money in where it's being spent.
Yeah, well, there's another big one that's coming down the pike.
Right.
And that could be in the same ballpark as this one, 8,000-ish, okay? And then there's a couple others that we're not, we don't even know. All right, so I think 10,000,
Going 15,000. Changing this from 5 to 15,000.
Yeah.
I guess.
Just
But the-
because of what's,
Yeah.
next year, we could always say, no one's doing it anymore, we can bring it down, but if we see it happening, if that money's gonna be spent in that area, I think we're better off, again, what we're trying to do is really having, rather than keep taking out a contingency for 20 different things, have it budgeted for the thing that it's gonna be spent for.
But the 11,327, that's coming out of this year's budget.
could. It's due next it's due in May, next month. But I have a recommendation that might help the board.
Okay.
Okay? All right, if you could hand that back to you. Okay, so, let's keep going. Remember, we did plus up contingencies, so, you should be okay there. Okay, nothing on the next page. Again, if you see something, let me know.
Which page are we on?
We are a safety inspection.
Here's the top.
What about fire?
Okay, we can go back to fire. Fire department.
Um, Do we need them to come in to argue their case for the cuts that we put in for equipment and contractual? What we did was, we took money out of their budgeted lines to create a reserve fund for the engine, a future engine, the reserve fund being 20,000. They did have a reserve fund of 8,000 for a vehicle. Now, the argument that has been made, and it has some logic, is that the major piece of equipment, the engine, generally has a 20-year lifespan. It has always been bonded when we've needed it. So the people who enjoy the benefit of that engine over that 20-year period will be paying off the bond. The board, and I do agree with the board, that we want to put some money away to create a nest egg for this engine, which is commendable, but we did sort of arbitrarily take about 8,000 and 4,000 out of, I believe, equipment and contractual, without any consultation with where those funds would be coming out of.
I'm okay with that.
When we made Charlie, when you're referring to consultation with the fire board?
Right, we did sort of, we just took lump sums out of those two lines.
Yeah, I think the board, if I remember right, I think you looked at the list of line items and some things were removed from the list of line items, if I recall. I don't remember which line items those were, but I think I remember there was kind of a deliberate process that happened to get that.
Well, the SCBA's are covered in the reserve fund for equipment. That is going to be a big expense. So that was smart on all of our parts, including the fire department, because I think they recommended that. But there are other items in the budget that they may actually need.
Do you have
That were cut.
Well, are we going to have another budget meeting?
There's a meeting on Monday if needed, yes.
Why don't we revisit it then, because I think someone like Eric Smith would be able to clarify what
Okay.
areas are.
I think the majority of the money we took out and put into a fund for the things were, again, I believe they were specific items, one being like the CB.
The self-contained breathing
Yeah,
apparatus.
that was in the regular budget. We decided to take those out so they would actually spend it on that. That's why we took it out to the reserve fund.
And that's reflected, but,
Right.
but there may be other things that are deemed as critical in the near term.
Okay.
Pat, my notes from that just say that was taken out and that the fire department was gonna decide. That
Right.
the board wanted, the lump sums of 4,000 and 8,000, but it was again gonna be the fire department's.
Yeah, it
They
was
have
not
their,
a line
and they would
issue.
have to decide of the money they're allocated and what they're gonna need. That's
Right.
what my notes indicate.
And the chief's argument is that they produced a bare bones budget.
The problem being is last year's budget, that was also bare bones, was not spent on it, half of what they had budgeted for. And then they ended up buying the car. That, I'll tell you right now, that influenced my decision. And the bottom line is we haven't taken any money away from the budget. We're reallocating for what we feel is more necessary for the village and spending, and that is putting money aside for the truck. And so I have no problem with Eric coming in and arguing his case. But that's, I don't feel that we're going, if we're going to put money back in the budget, it's gonna come off the truck contingency. It's not gonna be, I'm not gonna set any more money aside.
But too, if we, the truck comes out of our budget, you know, now putting it, say, aside on a reserve, it's coming out of theirs. Sort of, and we take $25,000 out of that, was it 20 or 25? So we moved it over and put it in the reserve fund, earmarked for the fire department?
Can we take 10 out of the reserve and put it back in, or 5?
Wait, so where's the 12 that we took out, where did that go?
It went into the truck reserve. They had asked for 8,000 to be put in a vehicle reserve for the fly car, the chief's car,
Which now they have.
which now they have, but they wanted to save up for the
Right.
next one.
So we're putting, so this is not for a truck, this is for,
No, this now is for a truck. We changed it from the vehicle, the car, to an engine, and we took $12,000 out of their equipment contractual to bring that reserve dollar up to 20,000.
okay, that makes sense. Okay, I have no problem with them coming in.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
I just have one thing on the police equipment. I spoke to Chief Scott, and he reevaluated the numbers with the Glocks. The number he gave was like the max we would ever have to spend. Factoring in trade-in, which we get $250 back. He also applied for the energy grant. It would cost us for 20 Glocks, $4,700. Now, he also mentioned the computer issue, which XP is not gonna be supported.
Right,
And he highlighted that was more important than this. Now,
and
we don't.
we put the full money aside for the
Did we?
computers. Yes.
I thought it
That was our-
Glocks, wasn't it?
No, yeah, but our whole thing was,
So I thought we took
is
that
we're gonna
off.
hold off all the
We didn't
Glocks,
take out the Glocks.
but we're going to go full on the computers, because
Yeah.
the Glocks, we feel we can hold off on for the year.
Right.
And our goal is that he continues to apply for Entergy
Mhm.
until it's fully funded. That was his,
And he
his,
has. And he
well,
has.
then we don't have to give him any
It
money.
doesn't guarantee we're getting it.
Right, that's what I'm saying, though, it's more important that we fund the computers.
Yeah. And I-
If we don't get it, I would personally like to revisit it next year, because the computers are more important.
But we did
Right.
fund the computer.
No, I'm talking about the Glocks.
Okay.
If we don't get the grant for the money, the problem is there's a couple of easy grants that we're totally not even going for, and Energy gives way too much money away that we're not touching. And Ken has done at least his job in going after the money. Sometimes he got it, sometimes he didn't. But he just got 30,000.
That was last year.
No, didn't he just get 30?
He applied for 30,000.
I don't know where he got it.
I thought he did, all right, we'll have to check.
No, he got money,
Yeah.
he received it in, I think, January, February.
Yeah.
And, it's going to pay Goose Creek or Communications or something like that. But supposedly the money that he got pays for all of it, so.
Oh, the Goose Town upgrade
Goose
to
Town.
radio.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the Glocks were what, in fact, the money, the 9,000 that never was put in the proper fund was from Entergy for Glocks. That was what it was supposed to be, but then the money was moved around 2 years ago, but so obviously we can get it. What I don't wanna do is spend tax dollars like for the computers that may not qualify. We know the Glocks qualify.
Right.
So I wanna do the computer, same thing with what we're doing here. If there's eligibility to put money aside for fire trucks out there that's not our money, then I have no problem moving some money. But I think we're more eligible for some of the life gear getting outside money for.
Oh, and Eric Smith is a talented grant writer
Right.
and has always written those grants.
Right, and that's why even for Ken, again, they did a really good job with the overtime, and he's pushing for the grants, and he's gotten money. I actually wouldn't mind even helping him out, but not on something that I know we can get outside money for. Give me something, give me some mundane thing no one's gonna give us money for that you need, and the computers are one of them.
So I didn't recall, so in the 15,000 for equipment is the computer upgrade,
Yes, full.
okay? Because that is.
That's very
That's
important.
timely too.
Yeah.
as we can-
Yes.
That's gotta happen. Again, I have, depending on our numbers and our flexibility, I wouldn't mind putting some money aside, again, not in a regular budget, but in a
Right.
contingency. If there's some issue, or all of a sudden, all the blocks explode, we have money set aside, but I would prefer he go, and we'll give him this directive. I have no problem making him a deal, and say, look, go after 2 grants, get the money for these 3 things, you had your 10-part wish list, we'll take care of 2 of the things on top. That we may not have wanted, but you know what? The guys that are hungry and the guys that are working, and the guys that are saving money, they should be rewarded. That's our whole point. That's like when Kev goes for and Pat Patterson went for the scrap. And they had $2,000 in scrap. You know what? They went the extra distance to go get it. What else, that $2,000, you need another $1,000 to get some piece of equipment you wanted. We'll do that because you're making the extra effort, not sitting back and just punching the clock and wait until 3 o'clock.
I will also mention, obviously there's some discussion there, we probably need a little bit more to discuss, let's say on Monday. Again, you don't have to adopt the budget till May 1st, okay, so you have time and you're better off spending the time than trying to rush to adopt this at your next meeting. Okay, so what I would recommend is if we need to have another meeting or 2 to work this out, let's do it, but there are some things that with the fire department, you have to understand. The truck that is, I think, 10 years old,
19.
no, the newest one. I don't think the newest one's 19 years old. I think it was 2005 truck.
No, that may be the chief's car, or,
And I think it's one of the fire trucks, but I'll have to check that. But that's on a serial bond that will not be completely paid off until I think 2030. And that's on the, and what it was on the 2003 bond, and that's why I'm thinking it was somewhere around 2002, 2004, that timeframe this truck was purchased. That was refinanced into a longer duration bond, so essentially that truck is going to be close to 30 years old by the time it's paid off.
What kind of interest do you pay over the course of 25 years of?
Those bonds are around, I think like around 4%.
why was it refinanced?
Because it was originally part of a serial bond, because for many years, equipment here has been borrowed. All equipment has been, you have a loader on the same document. That loader that we have an issue with,
We wrapped it all
yes.
up with something else.
Now, the refinancing was good because it lowered the rate,
Well, the youngest truck is a 2001,
and that's the truck.
and I've got it, 186,000 is still owed on it.
Yeah, and that was it refinanced into, I believe it was a 2012 refinanced in serial bond. And that matures, I believe, in 2030, plus or minus a couple of years. I don't have the bonds in front of me. So I think that it's a very fair position to say the board should consider trying to get out of deficit financing for equipment like that. And my recommendation, again, this is more of a policy thing, and this is your board's decision, but as a citizen, I think a fire engine's more important than a chief's car. That's just my opinion. And it's probably shared by a lot of residents. That being said, I think that the budget here is factoring both into the number. So that's maybe how you start it and have the conversation on Monday. But, the mayor, you mentioned that the fire department's budget has been flat, but really, the numbers actually, it went up.
No, I would have mentioned it was flat, I mentioned that a majority of the budget was not spent on what they budgeted for last year.
Well, that's a true statement, yeah, I agree.
That's what
But
I'm
again, I think that this board's position is that let the department heads spend the money on what they needed for. That was my take. But to justify, the justification, I agree, there's definitely, that could be challenged as to, well, do you really need the money if you're spending it on X instead of Y? But that's, the board has to decide that.
And I do think that the fire company hopes to apply for federal money to help offset some of the SCBA's and other pieces of equipment for which we have put 25,000 in reserve. So there
And
could be an offset.
Right, I almost wanna come up with some kind of not an official, something written down, but some kind of a policy with these departments that, look,
Yeah.
apply for this, get $20,000. We set up some contingency, we're throwing in another $5,000, taking that 20,000 we have budgeted for your item, you just got a grant for, throwing that into your fire truck contingency, because they need, I'd like to see a little more incentive for these people to go out, to get outside money. So that, and again, the more money we're putting in reserves for them, the less money we're gonna have to bond out later.
Finance,
Well,
Yeah.
in fact, I had a note to myself to ask Ed about the reserve. If, for instance, Eric is successful and gets a $10,000 federal grant to help pay for a CBA, for instance, could the $10,000 stay in reserve for future equipment, or does that end up being earmarked specifically for?
No, it's a type reserve, so it would be for a vehicle, okay? The equipment has more leeway. So on the equipment side, you have, whether it's masks or this or that.
But it could be banked, so,
In the equipment
Sure.
reserve, right.
Yeah.
He's saying you can use that for other equipment. You can't use the truck reserve for something
but it
else.
wouldn't stay at 25,000. The next year, it would be 35,000
No.
because they brought in 10.
No,
No.
I would spend the 10, that has nothing to do with the reserve. What I would do is.
Unless you decided to appropriate it that way.
No, I would rather leave the 25 unless there was something specific they wanted
for the
Oh,
truck?
okay,
for that,
for that.
for the equipment, and point out what other equipment, because we have to, if we start moving around reserve funds, then it's gonna get sketchy.
Yeah.
Take the money, take what other money they wanted, and move that into a fire truck fund. Like, if they got $10,000 for that, then have other equipment spent out of that fund.
How about putting that money into the vehicle reserve?
Fire truck, not vehicle.
Okay.
I'm telling you,
Well, you're-
You know, going forward, let's say,
I'm all about the truck.
let's say 5 years from now, we don't have the ability to finance under the
Exactly.
debt limit, and we need a truck. I think this reserve fund, I don't wanna screw with that for the truck. I think it's
Nope.
important that we have that in there, because we may not have the ability to finance it going forward if we have some serious issues with debt.
But that's what I think that we need to do, even with Kenny. The bigger items, like, we know that we're gonna have to rotate out some of these cars in the police, we know we have a fire truck issue. Let's get these guys to start doing more, because that's their job. Their job as the head of the department is not, I'm the best guy who writes tickets. I'm the best guy that puts out the fire. The head of the department is supposed to be managerial. The head of the department is supposed to be able to write grants, go to meetings, make contacts, that's their job. Not the best guy does the chemicals for the plant. That's the guy who's supposed to be able to write grants and make us money. So Kenny, Eric, he brings in $20,000 in grants. I'll put that $20,000 right for the fire truck. Plus, we'll throw him a bone, another 5,000. Whether it's a percentage, whatever, I personally would love to see us give more incentive so that later, 5 years down the road, instead of having $20,000 in a truck reserve fund, we have $150,000 truck reserve fund, because they partnered with us to cover some of these yearly costs. Same thing with the Glocks. Hey, go after the Glocks for Entergy and 3 or 4 other areas. In fact, some of these other things you already budgeted for, don't just automatically say it's no big deal, I don't have to worry about it, they're budgeted for it. take this item, if it's out there and you can get the money outside, we'll take that money, that 5,000, 2,000, 5,000, 20,000, and we'll put that towards your vehicle reserve fund, so that it is at the proper place, because we're low on that too. We're still not on schedule for the police to roll over their vehicles. But in 2 or 3 years, if these guys were more active with getting the money, and we threw them a bone here and there, I think they would be excited about the fact that, yeah, my vehicle reserve fund's at $60,000, and I'm not even changing over a vehicle until next year. That would give them more comfortable, feeling. Plus, then they would end up with more pieces to their puzzle. Whether it's the vests, whether it's the guns, whether it's the hoses, whether it's the breathing apparatuses. We have to start making them, just like we did with sewer and water, police and fire have to be more responsible for the management of their departments.
I think Mary, you're making a great point on that. The department heads need to be financial managers today,
Well,
and that's a big point.
with all due respect, I think there were issues last year. I have a great deal of confidence in Eric Smith as a manager, particularly where
Without question.
firematic things are.
Without question.
And Steve Suarez and Mickey Lee. That's why I would give them a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt on what they've requested as being really necessary.
Have him come in and make his presentation. It's different with the other departments that don't change like they do. But that's why I'd like to put it to the fire, that don't even try and run for either, whether it's president or whatever other piece is a managerial for the fire department, do not run for it if you don't feel confident going after grants, and not just grants, sponsorship money. Where can we put someone's name? Put Coke, it's the same color, put Coke on the side of the fire truck, it'll look nice, get some money. But we have to get creative. These guys, we're not a village of ditch diggers. We have very intelligent people here, and we're not taxing the people the way they should be. And if we don't, they're never gonna respond. If we would say, hey, get us some money, yeah, 1 or 2 people are gonna be, you know what, we need to get some money, let's go get some money. But if we tell 20 people, get us money because that's your job, or you're not gonna have it, at least 16 of them are gonna respond. The other 4, they'll be replaced.
Can I really throw a monkey wrench in and segue into
Last
something?
segue, because we gotta get back to,
Okay,
what we're
I'll
doing.
hold it.
hold that segue, because we will do it at the end. Let's
Okay,
get through this.
all right, so fire department, we're gonna discuss more on Monday. Okay, so we go to next page, safety inspection page. Again, the main thing there is the snow removal line went up. More could be added to that, but, I think that's an estimate, so you're probably okay. Next page, beautification page. There is a correction there, it says refuge, it should be refuse, so I'll make that mistake there, the spelling. I
That's
missed that.
all.
I missed that one.
Under celebrations,
Yep,
I'll make a presentation on Monday. I'd like $2,000 put under celebrations. But I'm not gonna do it tonight.
okay. All right, refuse and garbage, a question did come up, because I thought I saw some advertisement that the village is gonna be picking up stuff. The
No.
village isn't picking up anything?
No, we do. We pick up refuge, if it's spelled properly. We
We
pick
didn't
up,
budget anything for that.
no, DPW picks up like branches and stuff like that, if that's considered refuge. No, I'm saying it wrong.
Well, I'm trying to figure out, because
What's refuse?
we did strike this, but then it came up in a discussion, and I just wanna make sure that, that we're not gonna have costs here.
I went around with Kevin first the other day, because in the village, as we said at the department head meeting, there's not enough eyes on the street. So all the department heads have to work as a team when it comes to whether it's grass, too high of grass, the building department, they only have 2 guys. But even for the town garbage, Kevin said that there were 4 spots he drove me around at. These guys had stuff outside for 3 days straight, a day. If they don't call, and that might be something we have to do as a village, if you're not making the phone call to the town garage to get it picked up, which is what's supposed to happen, then, and I hate being the guy, I know I'm gonna be the mayor that's a jerk that is fining everybody, but you can't have your stuff sitting out there and expect that someone just magically pick it up. When you put stuff out in the corner that's not on a garbage collection day or a recycle day, you put large items out there, there's a process. You call the town and they come pick it up. People don't do that, maybe we need to fine them to get them to do what they're supposed to do. Because I'm telling Kevin, you call the town, get this picked up. We can't have this on our sidewalks 3 days. And it was disgusting, it was a bunch of just junk. Is that refuse? Charlie, say the word for me, probably.
Refuse.
All right,
Just said
yeah, I got it, I'm on.
Yeah.
You're looking at me funny, and I'm like,
No,
I
no.
don't get it wrong again.
No, I've got my reading glasses on, so
All right.
I'm.
I would think like a chair
Well-
is not refuse.
Well,
I
here,
mean, it is
What
refuse.
is- well,
I
that's-
think a chair is refuse, garbage is garbage.
Bulk pickup is
But
done by the town.
leaves are not,
Right.
I wouldn't think is refuse, but.
well, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go into that code.
Oh, wait,
It's yard
was that the
waste.
$20,000?
Yes.
No, the $20,000, now I have an answer. That $20,000 was for leaves. And we've already remedied that situation. We are not paying for dumping leaves or sticks or trees anymore. I've already talked to 2 people in the area that want the fill, and want the leaves, and want the trees, and want everything else. And that's what the town did for these years, which was the killing me why we spent any money. There was supposed to be a communication between town and village, and they still have 2 or 3 other places they're bringing refuse. No, they're bringing leaves and whatnot.
Yard waste.
Not bulk, any bulk stuff. It's yard waste. And so we are not doing that anymore. The next step that we are gonna move to make money is compost. That's the next step. But right now, or at least we're not gonna pay
All
for it.
right, well, what I'll do is I'm gonna
We
check.
do not need that money.
All right, I'm just gonna check the code to look at the expenditures to
Okay.
make sure that we're not missing something here, okay? If it all is expenditures for what you're
Right.
saying, Mayor, then I'll leave it alone. Otherwise, I'll bring it back up on Monday.
Good to go.
Okay?
I'm pretty positive we dealt with that when I was talking to Kevin, and you and I actually talked about it, because I think it was like $18,000.
Yes, we did talk about it, but I just wanna
Right.
make sure that we're.
I agree.
not-
No, we gotta
doing.
dot all the T's, dot all
Okay,
the I's.
next is, CD administration line. The main thing I wanna talk about here are your bans. Right now, this is the only ban that I have on a 7-year plan versus a 5-year plan. Okay, we owe, around 350,000, I believe, in principal on this, and we have been paying it for 2 years and then breaking it down, it's 112.5 for the remaining balance. What I did is I extended it out to a 7-year, for this budget purposes. And I want to find out if the board wants to go in that route of, number one, financing our debt to stretch out the band payments, so that we can consolidate all of our bands into one large band that will give us probably a 1% more favorable short-term rate on the money. And this includes bands in the general fund, sewer fund, and water fund, okay? I have a schedule that I would put into this plan that would essentially free up about $150,000 in principal payments by doing that.
And we're only extending it out to 7 years?
It will extend, well, in this case, it's 7 years, in some other cases, it'll be 10. This is because we've already paid 2 years on it.
Okay.
But like your water and your sewer, 400,000 that you borrowed this year, those would go out into approximately 10-year return borrowing.
We've brought this up a couple times. Let's take care of this right now. Let's talk about it.
I have no problem consolidating it into a fund or a band.
It'd be a band, but it would be a band that's probably worth $1.8 million, somewhere in that frame.
That rate is fixed on that end?
It is fixed for a year.
Okay, what
It's
is
not
the
long
advantage?
term.
Then why aren't we bonding it?
Because your interest rate for long-term is like 4%.
Okay,
But are we going to get a balloon payment after that first year?
or is there a cap?
No, you're essentially, there's no guarantees on anything, okay? What I'm saying is historically, right now, the way the Fed is setting the Fed funds rate, borrowing is a much, 1-2% borrowing, and it's anticipated that that will continue. That's the justification to this plan. If there was a concern that interest rates would rise dramatically next year, I wouldn't even be bringing this up. I would be saying, let's long-term finance this now so that we can lock in 4% instead of 7% next year if we have inflation. But right now, as crazy as it sounds, we have a higher risk of deflation than we do have of inflation, which is why the money rates are so low. So this would be an annual refinancing at a higher value, which will have a lot more, lot larger institutions interested in the note, and they would be more competitive in their interest rate.
Is there a cap in this loan? In other words, what do you say, it's at 1% or 1.8?
Right now, the one we just did, I believe, was like 1.96 for the 400,000. If we consolidated this into a 1.8, firms like Chase, JP Morgan, Barclays, what's the other one? Royal Bank of Scotland. Some of these bigger financial firms are more interested in those higher notes, and we could maybe get it down to 1.1, 1.15. Okay, this is on advice of our Munistat, Miller Nadelson, he is also advisor to the county executive and the county as far as financing. So he's very reputable, and he's basically recommending that we short-term borrow, but let our, we have the debt anyway, but it's all over the place. It's due this month, it's due that month, it's due this. So here's the problem, we're paying for 4 closings a year.
Yeah, your rationale for getting everything on the
Tied
same
together,
schedule
and then we
makes
get a
sense.
better interest rate. I really think that the real question is, do you want to,
What's any downsides to it?
you just have to pay debt longer. But here, look, if you didn't have as many mines in the ground that you have because of past decisions and so on borrowing and on spending and so on, you wouldn't really have to consider this. All you would do is to say, okay, let's marry all the bands together, but let's pay it on a 5-year plan. But I looked at all the bonds, and the shortest, or all the bands, the shortest repayment is 20 years. So, and all bands essentially can become bonds. All the documentation is set up for them to become serial bonds at some point. But your borrowing authority and your amount of duration to pay it back, all of them are able to be used up to 20 years if you wanted to. I'm not recommending 20, but I'm just saying you could.
A goal would be to pay everything off as soon as possible, but this is gonna give us a better rate, better money, a little more leeway. My thing is, if we do find additional money over the next 2 to 3 year period, if we can't pay this off, we still have a ton of projects. that
Yeah,
need
but
to
you're
be-
not, I'm gonna tell you right now, with the police contract.
That's what I'm saying, we
okay,
have a
with your
lot of things that,
certioraries,
I'd rather do this, and then if there's found money, we pay the things that need to be done, rather than bond those out.
well,
And also if we're locked into a low interest rate.
Exactly.
and there's nothing precluding you from, let's say, like in the capital fund, we have extra money. There's nothing precluding you to use that money to pay the debt off faster. Okay, you are allowed to do that. The money in a capital fund, let's say, which in one case, we do have some residuals.
There's no pre-penalty payment? you
No.
say. How often do they adjust rate, once a year?
When you refi. Your rate is based on the refinancing, date of refinancing.
So if we don't like the way it's trending, we could
Next
go
year,
long.
next year you could you could go in a different direction, or you could turn it into a bond. But remember, the bond will have a higher interest rate.
Yeah.
But it's a fixed rate for a long period of
That's my
time.
point. If we see the environment changing, the interest rate environment changing, the ability to lock into a fixed rate.
Correct. And you can pay these off early,
Yeah. No
Okay.
penalty.
so.
Everybody good with that?
what-
Yeah, especially if
makes
you're
sense,
talking
especially
about
when-
like 1.1%.
Yeah, you're 70 basis points,
All right,
80
so
basis points.
let's move forward on that, that's done. Decision's
Okay,
made.
well, what that's gonna do is that's gonna impact, your water and your sewer fund as far as its debt. So what you're gonna see is that there's gonna be a lower, appropriation. So what I will do then is, I will adjust it accordingly. But we're gonna have to talk about the metered sales, let's say for water, you're gonna get a certain amount, and there's a commitment from this board to increase water rates. I don't want that to cloud, like the water, picture will look a lot better because you don't have as much principal payments, but the reality is,
Right.
you can't use that. You still have to factor in that you need the higher
It's
revenue.
not found money.
Okay,
You can't spend $1 twice, huh?
yeah.
Just
Okay.
manipulating
so-
that.
Because again, everything has to balance out, so if I have lower appropriations, then my revenues need to be lower to balance out, but I'm not gonna artificially change any of that, so we're gonna have to, take a look at how we're gonna account for that. What I would recommend we do is, if we're gonna have lower principal payments, then we add money to a contingency or to something else to balance that out, okay? Because I don't wanna change your revenue number, because I think your revenue number is good. But what I wanna do is if we have principal payment, maybe we move some money into another category.
I like the contingency funds because I think our long-term debt issues will be resolved with that.
Okay, you can increase, just basically take the amount that we'd be saving on the ban, putting it into contingency as far as a expense, recognizing that you may never realize that expense, but you have it there if you do,
Right.
okay?
And I'm not paying interest on that at that point.
No.
Because we have it.
No. Okay, so I'm gonna do that for all of the bands, all right, and you'll have a decent amount of principal money that will now be able to be appropriated. Remember though that the water and sewer are standalones, so you can't, water and sewer can work with each other because of timing. Remember, we give loans and so on because your water rents don't happen until May. But the general fund can't be intermingled.
How long does that take, Ed, to consolidate that?
I'm sorry?
How long would that take to realize any savings on that?
What I'm gonna try to do is marry all the bands to hit next March, on the same date that you guys, incepted the water tanks one that we just did.
Right,
Try to get it all to fall on that day.
okay.
So like we have, a ban, I believe, that's due in August. So what we're going to do is we're gonna pay that, we're gonna refinance it to mature in March. Okay, instead of maturing a year later, it's gonna mature at a shorter term. And then we're going to refinance it then into a complete bond, essentially a ban. Okay, so that's just the plan with that. All right, so I'll make those adjustments. And we'll have a picture as far as there'll be more value money that's available for you on appropriations from those decisions.
But you're not recommending changing the appropriated fund balance, 300,000?
Well, I'm gonna try to get a better picture because we're almost a month and a half away from the end of the fiscal year. A rule of thumb typically with fund balances to be conservative on that number, so what that means is this number will not be higher than what I think the fund balance is, okay? Because you don't want to get in a situation where I put 300 as the fund balance and it's actually 225. And we have a deficit of 75,000 in revenue.
Well, that's why I was concerned that maybe that number was high.
I believe it's actually the other direction.
Good. I hope you're
Okay.
right.
But I'll know more at the middle of the month when I take a look at our revenue and expenses and see where we're at with a month and a half left in the year. That's a conservative number, and it's always going to be. I'll also tell you that the fund balance number for water and sewer is very conservative. I suspect that the sewer fund balance is growing, okay? Yeah, and but that's good, but I don't want the board to count on that yet, because that's a relatively new phenomenon now, okay? Now, it happened before, I'm not gonna say it didn't happen before. If you look on 3 years ago, there was some fund balance used from, I believe it was sewer fund and from the general fund. But then it went away, and fund balance last year was almost non-existent in water. It was non-existent in water and sewer. So I'm gonna try to build up.
Is he leaving?
Who was that?
He's going downstairs.
So I'm gonna try to build that up, okay? So you just expect that fund balance number is gonna be conservative, as it should be, okay? Okay, that's pretty much what I have for budget. So on Monday, what I'd like to do is nail down, your target for appropriations, your final appropriations target number. My recommendation is that target number sits somewhere around last year's, and give yourself the 50,000, 60,000 spread for carryover for next year, unless you find that you're gonna need that because of unanticipated costs next year that are coming up. Now, we did bump up certiorari, so that's helpful.
Right, but now you said there was like 100,000 out there.
That's
You
the
wanna leave
spread.
50-ish for next year.
I think
So
you
do
should
we
have a carryover if you can.
I agree 100%. Is there room right now, or are we at,
You're at $40,000 you can add to the budget.
but that you're asking to carry over?
No, I said you could add 40,000-ish, but again, I have.
Plus the 50 carryover.
Correct, I have to add our valuation changes,
Right.
because that's gonna change our rate. But as far as our actual tax cap, our tax cap is $3,008,000.
I would rather carry over and add contingencies and reserves. I would rather not, if we've already cut something, with the exception of when the fire department comes back in. If we've already cut something, I don't wanna add it. It's hard enough to try and find cuts. So if we have to, we put it in a contingency fund, if the board feels they wanna use it.
Here's my recommendation there. I would put a $50,000 fund for police, past
And
salaries.
DPW,
And whatever, just put it as a pest, in the police line and DPW line, we could add it. And put it as a, your past salaries fund. And,
Do we have any potential numbers on the retroactive?
We sat down at one point in time and did some numbers crunching,
Yeah.
and I don't remember what they were, yeah, we did.
Would that cover it?
I don't remember exactly, for some reason, I'm thinking 60,000, something like that. Do you remember, Joey? I don't have that
Well,
information
because
with
it
me.
was multiple years, and
Yeah.
we
It's
were
almost
also
2 years. Yeah.
projecting, I can't speak
Right,
to
for
either,
the next.
for this year with
Right.
an increase.
Right,
The projection, I believe, we said was in the reserve for this year, but the retro
going
pay,
forward from,
yeah,
yeah.
that's.
yeah, the other, to make it easy too, you could, with the police department, you could put that, just plus up your contingency 50 grand with the board's understanding that 50,000 is gonna pay for those retro pay.
it's gonna be that much.
Well, I don't know, I shouldn't have said
Right,
that.
we need to come up with some kind of number, because I need some of that too,
Yeah.
for the
How'd that
DPW.
go? We'll talk about that.
Yeah,
later.
it's-
Good.
Whew.
Okay,
Yeah, we need to do that.
all right, so that, I'd
Your
like
DPW
the board to
contract's by the way.
decide that on Monday also, so I can plug that in. My recommendation with the way this is flowing is that we have next meeting, I adjust the numbers after the next meeting, and I give you guys an updated document, let's say an updated tentative line. And with that updated tentative, you guys decide whether or not that becomes the adopted.
Sweet.
Okay, I also would say that based on everything, the way it's going right now, you probably have till Monday, the 28th, really, to adopt this. I wouldn't wait to adopt it any longer than that.
I'd like to lock it down as best possible on Monday. Do you really feel, do you think that we can lock it out on Monday?
Well, you're not gonna be able to adopt it on Monday because the constitutional tax limit has to be filed. You gotta file that prior to adoption, and so, is tax.
Well, the next
cap.
meeting is on the 21st, right? Maybe we can pull it by the 21st?
I gotta look, I think there's a 10-day requirement.
Okay,
on
if not, we go for the
constitutional
next
tax
one, but I, if we can't get it on the 21st, we get it on the 21st.
It-
Again, I'm not gonna rush
What
it.
we could do on that meeting date is just to finalize that everybody's comfortable with it, and then make sure that the proper amount of time elapses between adoption and the constitutional tax limit.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think the tax cap has a debt, the tax cap has to be filed prior to adoption, but I think constitutional debt limit requires 10 days. Why, I have no idea, but that's what I recall as the requirement. If that's the case, then we'll adopt it at the 10-day point. If it's not the case, then yes, you could probably potentially adopt it on the 21st.
Sweet Georgia. Good to go? Move to executive session.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
So, what's up? I waited this whole time, we gonna talk about this?
We,
or-
I don't know,